Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Further Comments. Today we're going to be talking about how to sell to lawyers in the AI era. And we have with us a special guest today. Damien, we've got Ben from Nexl.
I'm so excited. This is going to be so much fun. Ben's a smart person who's doing smart things, and Nexl is an excellent product.
And Nexl this year or last year was one of the fastest growing companies as recognized by the Australian Financial Review. They sell a CRM for law firms, and CRMs for law firms may or may not sound like an exciting thing to you, but they've made it super exciting. So we're going to hear from them as we discuss this extraordinarily crowded and noisy market in legal tech right now.
Sure. I'm going to start with an observation that's going to turn into a question. So the observation is that when I was litigating, of course, all of the Rainmakers in my law firm said that you need to do things like go to coffee with people. You need to go to lunches. You need to do presentations. You need to do articles. That is the way you become a Rainmaker. It wasn't until I left the law that I realized, wait, Rainmaker is a salesperson, right? These are synonymous. Lawyers say, no, I'm not a salesperson. I am a Rainmaker, right? But they're salespeople. And the strange part is that when you think about any other business, you have the sales department, you have the marketing department, and then you have the delivery department, right? So these are separate. But with Rainmakers, they're all three. Sometimes they're different. You have the relationship partner that is the Rainmaker, and then you have the grinder that is actually the doer of the work. But often they're the same person. The Rainmaker is the doer and is the marketer. As we think about that conglomeration, if I'm a doer and a salesperson and a marketer, that's a lot of work to do. What I think that is really good about Nexl is that you're able to say, we'll offload a lot of that work for you, and we'll be able to do that work. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how Nexl helps that problem.
Yeah. This will
wait, do it without making it a sales pitch.
Oh, this is so funny that you bring this up. Before I went to law school, I got my degree in bio. I took a particular class in neuroscience of biology, specifically around storytelling and basically the power of storytelling on the brain. Effectively, our brains are completely wired for stories. It has the same neurochemical makeup as whenever you have an orgasm. It hits the exact same profile, the same neuro cocktail in your brain. Inversely, whenever you say things in a factual, logical sort of manner, it can be the same fact pattern. A dog ran over thing, dog ran at 5 miles an hour. And you do it without an underlining narrative. In great stories, it has a mythological character, it has an emotional character, and it has a logical character. And then there's different chemical makeups that hit each one of those together. Stories are basically how you can really sell without selling. To answer Damien's question, whenever I was practicing, I would basically see the exact same problem all the time, which was busy partners leveraging associates to prep them for the state of, let's say, a client relationship or anything. They were time poor and they were also information poor as it related to the relationship. For example, an associate and a partner are going on a call, and let's pretend that it's a hot day in Miami. They just got out of court and they're on the way. Without a CRM system and without relationship data, it would typically be that the partner would just rely on whatever he or she was able to remember about the case. They also probably wouldn't really understand what was the general dynamic of who had previously spoken to this client, what was the category of the kind of conversations, what sort of business development had been done, had they gone to another event, that client, they didn't have the entire relationship profile, the relationship intelligence. And let's pretend that this partner sits down there and starts talking, and all of a sudden the client just stops him and says something like, I'm sorry, I have to stop you. Another partner was in here 2 weeks ago, and you're completely contradicting what he or she said. It obviously looks like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing within the law firm. That's a bad look, where in a world where AI is going to level intelligence, practice intelligence, relationship intelligence, or relationship experience be the last distinguishing factor. And that's a lot of what Nexl is doing today. Nexl is really empowering lawyers, but also business development and just the business of law to help you show up in a much better way, and taking that down from I just rely on the associate to do it, who's also busy, to seconds giving you that data.
One of the reasons that our brains are wired to be storytellers and story absorbers is that we have sat around campfires for millennia and said, wow, did you hear about that mastodon that ate the other person, right? Or, you know,
exactly. It was this big.
Yeah, right.
This big.
Exactly. And then it keeps getting bigger, right? So the elements, the ethos, logos, and pathos, the logos is the logical side. The pathos is the side that, can I trust this person? And the ethos is this the right thing to do? That's, of course, been part of storytelling forever. And so a good salesperson, a good rainmaker, integrates all three of those storytelling about the mastodon and how the legal risk is the mastodon and how you need to avoid that legal risk, whether it be litigation or transactional, et cetera. And of course, litigators, we tell jury stories. We tell judge stories. We tell client stories, right? All of these is storytelling. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is that we as law firms are less collective entities. We are a collection of fiefdoms. Where I have this fiefdom and that fiefdom, and we're kind of all under the same umbrella, but often the right hand, as you say, doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So maybe talk a little bit about how you're teaching the right hand and the left hand to be able to know each other a bit more, and then be able to incorporate the ethos, logos, and pathos into that storytelling to get more business.
Before I answer that, storytelling conceptualizes and maybe one of the fatal flaws that I still see with legal tech companies coming to market, which is they don't contextualize the logical value proposition within the context of ethos and a pathos that generally allows for people to understand. So they don't tell that story at different levels, meet people where they're at. We tend to tell the same message regardless. And this is a lot about personas. But basically, you need to tell different stories to different people based on different contexts.
Know your audience.
But yes, exactly. But hard to execute, especially doing it at scale. Whenever we think about bringing firms together and getting them out of fiefdoms, I would say basically data is the strongest story that can bind people. That's a story around what is the quality of the relationships within the context of the law firm. It's one thing for partner A to say, these are my relationships. I know a lot about my relationships. Did you know that your relationship knows X, Y, and Z? Like, as soon as you start to get out of a 6-person firm, they've worked with each other for the last 40 years. I know everybody that your partner knows, but do you know how many times your partner has spoken to X person over the last 5 days? Do you know how often you guys are all speaking to your top 3 referral partners, and whether or not that's distributed evenly across these 3 referral partners, or have you guys all taken the same guy out to lunch 100 different times? The data is really what starts to unpack this. And this is the story that can hold everybody together.
Once upon a time, a partner in a law firm said to me 2 things. 1, relationship sell. That's the thing that people are buying when they're buying things from law firms. You're not getting legal advice. You're getting relationship. You're getting trust. You're getting this good feeling of someone's looking after you. And the second thing that I remember becoming a senior associate and a partner having a conversation with me around like, well, now you're going to start doing more business development, go and talk to clients, go and mingle, etc. And I said to him, oh, Stefan, I feel icky. I don't want to sell. I just, it's not me. And he said, Horace, don't think about it as selling. Think about it as you're offering help to these people. You're giving them value. And in exchange, they're paying for that value. So if you hold up your end of the bargain, it's not icky, as long as you meet your promises. So that's kind of how I've always thought about selling. And I want to throw it to you guys. Like, how do you think about selling?
I've got some thoughts on this, and I'm going to throw it to Ben. There's an old story about a CEO having an all hands meeting and saying, which of you is in sales? And then he says, well, everybody should have their hands up, because every single person in this company is in sales. Some are selling externally, obviously, but if you're in product, you're selling, you're pitching ideas to your other product person to get that idea made. If you're in marketing, you're in sales. If you are in delivery of consultancy, you're in sales, right? So everyone should have their hand up that everyone is in sales. And I would say that every single person on the planet is in sales, because everyone is trying to get an objective, whether that objective is a teacher trying to sell the kids on the things, or whether it's a product person trying to sell that this product idea is a great idea. So everyone is in sales. And once you realize that, it's not as icky anymore, because really sales is a way to be able to demonstrate value. As you said, this is the value of my product idea. This is the value of my product. Name your product. And there's been a gazillion Ubers for X. I've not really seen a CRM for lawyers. So I guess the question for you is, how do you differentiate yourself from somebody who would say, I just need Salesforce. Why do I need Nexl? I think there's probably some really good answers, but I'd like to hear yours.
I'll go back to whenever we were thinking about getting into the CRM market. So we're going back about 4.5 years now. As we thought about it, 2 things really stuck out for us. So the first was the kind of story that I had just told you about partner A and partner B, and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is thinking. We know that this is happening all the time. And the market was also reflecting back to us just the fact that was still the case. Now, that was still the case when Salesforce has been in existence for 20, 25 years. And so we knew that there was a particular market opportunity within the overall sales CRM market for law firms. The second piece of this was there's always has to be some sort of positioning, something that feels updated and new relative to the product or the category, especially whenever you're selling into a particularly understood product category. CRM is not new within law firms. So the question is, what is new that changes the game? Now, of course, AI, you see this manifesting itself in every single category because basically just AI gets slapped on top of everything. And it's now customer experience powered by AI. It's Miro boards powered by AI. And that's fine. It's sort of like a race to the bottom now. But at the time, we understood within CRM that data, and particularly the idea of data enrichment for contacts, for relationships, had come a very long way. At that point in time, 2019, 2020, 2021, the data enrichment. Now, we're all on the internet. Our third parties, our third-party data is out there. It's all floating out there. And the ability to basically simultaneously capture data and relationship data, first-party data, enrich that data with outside third-party, and then constantly be doing that through the function of APIs and all, presented something like an updated version of CRM. Now, I'll just add one extra layer there. It just can't be a magic trick for being a magic trick. A lot of things are just powered by AI or powered by automation just for the sake of doing it. It has to solve a deep, super boring, really low value, really almost like, I don't like this version of my job. It bubbles up and it bothers me that I have to do it. That's where product market fit starts to happen. You guys following me?
It's a pain point.
It has to be a pain point. And this is where the psychology of it really bothers you. So in the case of data for CRM, data hygiene, data maintenance, just data slogging, the fact that most CRMs had X number of contacts that just fell out, and just what that felt like in 2021 to be sitting there and thousands upon thousands of contacts just completely out of date, sending emails to things that were bouncing back at 50% rates, the embarrassment of like, why did we just send things to people who have passed away 10 years ago? All of that sort of feels not good. That's how we initially distinguished ourselves. Low data entry for a CRM that was constantly keep itself up to date.
What is the pain point, the problem, and then what is the solution? What is the value to be able to solve that problem? That's what storytelling is. It's this mastodon that you stepped on Joe. That was horrible. So now that's the problem. Here's a way to solve that problem. Run really fast, right? As we think about storytelling and pain points, of course, we have to tell it to a recipient that is actually fertile to be able to receive this. And so, of course, know your audience is something that every speaker does. Know your audience, who you're speaking to, and every salesperson. Know your audience. Know your audience, not only their persona within the law firm, but also the work that they do. Because if you're an innovation person, that could mean lots of things. Does that mean that you're building things, or does that mean that you're coordinating people that are building things? Are you a check writer, or are you somebody who asks the check writer for permission? So maybe you could talk a little bit about law firm personas. Who is the audience that you're speaking to?
I'll answer it in a very simple way, and then I'll elevate it just a little. The initial power user of Nexl is a marketing and business development person who has a proactive view on how the law firm can grow. With that being said, our main value proposition and what we want to come into market is we are the CRM that the entire law firm wants to use. If you're a marketing person, you're enabled with the relationship data to build lists that are impactful whenever I'm sending out emails to get the right people into that event. If I'm a business development person, I want to know 100% after we went and spent $10K to go to that event. I want to know how many people we met. I want to know who spoke to those people and what was that about so that I can set up follow-ups. And if I'm a lawyer, I go back to my partner A, partner B. I want to make sure that I don't contradict my partner down the hall whenever I go on that client call. And I want to know that partner B went there effectively. I just described 3 use cases, but we try to basically be the CRM that everybody can use. Now, I just told 3 different stories, but these stories, of course, Venn diagram over one another. And of course, then there's the CFO and the innovation person, et cetera, who comes in that supports. But I would say that these 3 stories have to come together. And the most important thing is, how does that dissect? The marketer to the BD, to the lawyer, and then the virtuous cycle of how these things relate to one another.
We've been talking about roles. Marketing and BD is a role within a law firm. Another role within a law firm is a partner. Another role within a law firm is just a grinder. Number three, am I a gatekeeper? You have to go through me to be able to get to the check writer. So these are capabilities that aren't the title on LinkedIn, but are a very important persona, because you don't want to bypass the gatekeeper to go to the check writer, because that will make the gatekeeper very angry and tell the check writer not to do the thing that you want them to do. Think about the roles that are on LinkedIn as the x-axis, and then we'll think about the capabilities that I just mentioned as the y-axis. There's also a z-axis. Where is your profitability? Am I a profit center or am I a cost center? When I was at a law firm, if I wanted a new laptop, it would be there in 10 minutes, and I would have a brand new laptop. That's because I was a profit center. My friends who go in-house to corporations, they say it takes me months to get a new laptop. Why? Because in-house counsel are cost centers. But if I'm a profit center, a rainmaker within a law firm, if I'm out a laptop, that means I'm not bringing in more money. So the z-axis is, am I a profit center or am I a cost center? Because that will then determine whether the thing I want gets done or doesn't get done. So as I think about, I'm a prospective customer of Nexl. Am I a managing director? Am I an IT decision maker on the x-axis? Am I a check writer or a worker bee or a gatekeeper on the y-axis? And then on the z-axis, am I a cost center or am I a profit center? And I would guess that most of the marketing and BD people are profit centers. The better they do their jobs, the more money the firm brings in. That's at least my hypothesis. I don't know if that's true.
Right.
Ben, you can maybe tell me if that hypothesis is correct or not.
As you were speaking, a lot of what I was thinking about is good sales process and following it so that you're triangulating in your XYZ, because you just created a 3-dimensional space effectively. So you'd want to be triangulating. A good sales process is really going to be checking those off. And unpacking that is really important. In law firms, buying is truthfully a team sport. There tends to be a decision maker. Absolutely. Just get to the decision maker. And in some sense, that's true. But the decision maker is really existing within a paradigm of everybody else simultaneously. If we come back to stories that transcend but include all of this, I don't think that products fail today because they're bad products or they don't deliver end value. I know so many people in legal tech, so many founders, so many great teams. They're obsessive about the value that they're trying to drive for these teams. What ends up happening is that it dies on the vine because the collective cannot simultaneously have a story that includes them all effectively. It's not a big enough story that's being told in a way that resonates with each person. This is the hardest thing in the world, but that's the dynamic. It's less about the value proposition as it relates to what you're trying to do. And it's more about, does that fit cohesively across the organization?
I think you've pointed out something really interesting, and that is, depending on who you're talking to, your messaging is going to be a little bit different, because what matters to them is a little bit different, but you still need consistency no matter who you're speaking to. You can't go to one person and say, I'm selling you a pie, and go to another person and say, I'm selling you an ice cream, because then they're going to talk and go, what are we buying here? We're really confused. Interestingly, law firms are probably one of the hardest organizations to sell to, because even law firms that have a dedicated procurement team, dedicated innovation team, the partners are still the ones who make decisions. And the partners, if they're not happy, they're going to step in and say, we're not buying that. I don't get it. So in a way, you have to turn these different people in the procurement team, the innovation team, the knowledge team, the marketing team into your spokesperson so that they convince the partners. So have you ever tried to tell your story in such a way so that it's simple enough for a person to repeat and make it their device to convince the actual decision makers?
Yes. Another way of saying this is only stories can basically cut through this. And of course, story is not once upon a time, blah, 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 blah. Story is a logical argument wrapped up in a mythological or sort of a bigger meaning story wrapped up with an emotional up and down. Before it was this, then it was that, and this is how we got over and defeated the dragon. It just begins and ends with how strong is that story? And then more importantly, how does that story wrap up with the other stories? I sell you an ice cream, I sell you a cake. The only way that you could bring that together is we're all getting sweeter and purposely increasing our blood sugar level because I don't know, in this alternative world, that's great.
I'm going to take us in a slightly different direction and kind of talk about the more general stuff. So let's take the example right now of a brand new startup that's formed in San Francisco. They've just got $300 million worth of funding. I don't know who that might be. And then they have to now write a story that cuts through all the noise because everyone else is selling the exact same thing. How do you do it? How do you, and I'm saying this specifically, not rhetorically, form a good story there?
In your hypothetical, the $300 million startup, they find a problem, then they design a solution that maybe solves that problem, and then they build a little bit deeper into that solution. So maybe it's like a bazooka to try to kill a molehill or something, and then they go to market. Whenever I was just getting into tech and thinking a lot about growth and go to market, I sort of bypassed the idea of product market fit, which I think a lot of people have in their mind, product and then market in this sequential way. I was just predisposed to it because of like the storytelling. In effect, I always think about the market. What is the general cultural gravity of the particular market, the personas within that market, the power dynamics within that market, the pain points that are celebrated and then also not celebrated, and then design some product that fits within that story. Is there a story that you can tell within that? So to answer your question, I would say, do you know the worldviews? Do you know the stories? Do you know what people within your particular, to go back to Damien's entire access, do you understand that access so deep? And then do you know the stories that are circling within that little bubble? In the case of Nexl, we understood what conversation was happening across the personas within the CRM product, such that we understood that manual data entry was a sore spot that had not been solved. And there was a storyline about how that was affecting the entire persona that was floating across the entire business of law. And because of that, we said, okay, there's something here.
I'm thinking about all of those personas and being able to please all the people all the time. As Lincoln said, is impossible. He just said fool all the people all the time, but we're going to use please for the purposes of these sales conversations. So you can't please everyone all the time. There's the old joke about the people blindfolded describing an elephant. It's wrinkly. No, it's got a long tube. No, it's got a tree trunk, right? Depends on where you are within the law firm, how you perceive the things. You need to speak to all the people that are feeling parts of the elephant. I need to speak to litigators and transactional lawyers. But then even within that group, there's not just a litigator persona. There's plaintiffs, lawyers versus defense lawyers. If I'm billing by the hour, I'm going to have a much different persona than if I'm billing as a contingency fee because I want to shrink my time, or a flat fee. And then you have product liability lawyers versus antitrust lawyers, totally different animals. Business litigators versus consumer protection, totally different, right? That's even just within the litigator side. And then you have the transactional lawyers. Is this an M&A lawyer, or do they do construction deals? Totally different practices that have totally different needs. So as you think about being all things to all people, each one of those is a different part of the elephant. So how do you tell a good story about the value you're providing to all the people that are feeling different parts of that elephant? I need to tell a story that's going to be ideal for the transactional lawyers and the litigators and all the flavors of both sides of those. And then maybe your message just becomes so watered down that somebody says, I don't see the value because they haven't given me what I need as an M&A lawyer or what I need as a product liability litigator. For me, because we at VLEX, we serve litigators and transactional lawyers and all those flavors. Right. My story, at least for us, is that we have the data. You need the cases, the statutes, and the regulations if you're a litigator, because if you don't have yesterday's case, you fail. You also need the regulations for a transactional deal. If this deal is going to get sunk by antitrust laws in the EU, you need to know that. So we have the data in a way that big $300 or $400 million invested companies don't have that data. So that's my story that I tell. And that's the part of the elephant that everybody cares about is the data. Right. So I guess the question for you, Nexl, is what are you telling that is going to be effective for all the parts of the elephant? What is the Nexl story?
Albert thinks a lot about the idea, and this is going to answer your question. And he put a post up on LinkedIn about this, which is basically trying to solve the smallest problem and then with a view toward basically building on problems that you can stack on top of that. So expanding the market through small problems instead of trying to expand the story. In some sense, it's shrink the story down with the idea that then you can build on that story in small chunks. It's how do you eat an elephant kind of thing, obviously, one bite at a time. This whole view is also expounded in the idea of crossing the chasm. In that book, there's a chasm and you have to cross it. But the most important part is like, where do you cross if you want to win World War II? They didn't say, I'm going to take over Europe. No, all we have to do is win Omaha Beach. And Omaha Beach on Normandy will allow us to go south of Normandy. And there we will win the other one. And then from there, blah, 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 blah. That's the whole takeaway of that, but effectively. What's the smallest unit of story that basically you can win within that market?
I think that lines up with the advice that you get a lot from VC funds, which is define a really small problem that will sell. If it's a small enough but painful enough thing that people want to solve and pay for, that's what you should be targeting. Damien, as you say, VLEX is trying to sell this kind of big thing to multiple people and your core story is data. We have a similar problem where we're like, what exactly do we tell people that Cynthia does? Like, how exactly do you frame that? Because if it's too big, the message is diluted. If it's too small, you're cutting your audience down to like a third of what it can be. It's a hard balancing act. I don't know the answer to that. Like, still, I kind of go, I don't know, Cynthia's a thing. And then only when pressed, and I go, oh yeah, it's deal-making tools, I guess, for transactional folks, I guess. Yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard. All these startups, all of these people that are out there selling their wares right now, that's kind of one thing. We empathize with you because you have a hard job trying to define your message and sell your wares. But then on the other side of the fence, all the people who are being pitched to, how do we make their lives better?
Yeah. What is the value that you're providing to those people to make their lives better? When we think about that value, the word wrapper, WRAPPER, like you're an AI wrapper or ChatGPT wrapper, has been pejoratively thrown around a lot. And I have been guilty of throwing it around pejoratively until I started watching a Silicon Valley podcaster is talking about, well, what is a SaaS system, software as a service, but a wrapper around SQL and HTML? That's all it is. It's a wrapper around SQL and HTML. I was like, and that's
a very thick wrapper.
A very thick wrapper.
Extraordinarily thick wrapper.
That's right. But the thing is, the underlying foundational technology is not new. What does the SaaS do? Well, it provides value. It solves the problem that HTML and SQL doesn't solve. So really the value provided by any SaaS, whether that be Salesforce or whether that be Uber, is that it's using SQL and HTML and web apps and iPhone apps to be able to then provide value. A lot of consumers will say, well, does it have AI in it? And that's as dumb as saying, does it have SQL in it or HTML in it? Does it have electricity in it? Of course it does, because everything does. But really the question is, what value is that providing? What is a pain point for that consumer that you're solving? So that is a long prelude to the question for Ben is, what is the value that Nexl is providing to people to solve those problems?
I come back a lot to the idea of the story that I told about the marketer, the business development, and the lawyer coming together to do more than each of them could individually do. The marketer wants clean lists to get somebody to an event. The business development person wants to follow up with those people post-event. The lawyer wants to know all of the information about what emails were sent, who spoke to who in terms of the business development. And they also want insights into the sort of quality of the relationship so that they can go to that meeting prepared so that they don't look like they have egg in their face. Now, doing that across disparate tools today, yes, of course, it's doable with APIs and it's all clunky and it's pasted together, all of that. Doing that together on a platform where you are working through that simultaneously, not only brings people together and they're doing things simultaneously at the right time on the same platform, but also they're executing and moving things forward. And that's something that we're really interested in. The iterations that we have done on CRM have really been moving the platform into execution and into work. This has manifested itself in basically our workspaces, where we're going and saying, okay, now that you have all the contact data, now let's do something with it. Let's run a project. So today, Nexl has something like a workspace, or to use like a product, like a Notion space that's built into the CRM that allows people to simultaneously get the insights, get the data, but then push that into actual work. This is what we are going to do. We want to sell employment services to Uber. We know 6 people at Uber. Those people are 1 person in the HR department, 1 marketer, 1 executive, and we're going to get those people to introduce us to one of the employment lawyers within Uber. And this is how we're going to do it. This is who's going to do it. These are the dates that they're going to do it. And they're doing this together. They're grouped together on one platform. So really, that's what we're enabling. And today, you could do that with a bunch of disparate systems, or you could do that together on one thing where everything's come together.
I think we're coming close to the end of our allotted time, and I think we can do a closing round, and I will ask the question of Horace and Ben, and then maybe I'll take a cut at it. It's a 2-part question. question number one is, how do we demonstrate value to skeptical lawyers? That's number one. Question number two is what I hope to be a recurring closing question. What in the current legal tech environment makes you optimistic about our future? So two questions. How do you provide value to skeptical lawyers, and what makes you optimistic?
How do you demonstrate value to lawyers who are extraordinarily skeptical? Put the technology in their hands and let them do the driving. Let the product speak for itself, because they're always going to be skeptical when you're doing demos. They're going to go, well, that was a scripted demo. You picked the documents, you did whatever. Put it in their hands. Let them test it. Let them break it. And the second part of what makes me optimistic about the market today, and I'll link it back to the sales, is that there are so many people trying to solve all of these different problems, which we haven't had the resources to solve before in the legal tech vertical, because it's always been underfunded. Now there's so much money being thrown around. More people trying to solve more problems means more and better products and more opportunities and better lives for the lawyers and their customers.
Great. Ben, what do you think?
I'll pick up on what Horace said in his answer to the second question. See, Horace, I thought you were going to go with, we now have generative AI, and that's like a phase shift in terms of the kind of problem because of the power of it vis-a-vis the work. I'll say something different, which is I think that legal tech in general has matured in terms of its go-to-market so that the distribution of these products and services together will basically, with the funding, money helps. Money solves money problems. Distribution is a money problem. I think really good go-to-market that brings the best into the industry will help the snowball get going by virtue of basically just telling good stories, following good sales processes, understanding personas at a deep level. That's what makes me hopeful. How do you show value to lawyers? You have to put it in their hands, absolutely, but you have to put it in their hands in the context of something that solves a pain that doesn't really get to the core of their identity as lawyers. I was reading something, I don't even know who it was. They were describing a product that was solving M&A deal drafting for lawyers. And the founder said, it was Adrian Parlow. You guys know Adrian? Adrian was saying, let's just automate that away. And there's like, no, we like to do that. We like to do that. In the case of Nexl, lawyers don't like to show up to a meeting looking silly because they're contradicting another partner. It goes back to the story and the market product fit, which is find things that don't give people either a sense of joy, a sense of identity, something that sort of brings them down. I think solving those type of problems is what value actually is. You're solving something painful because it doesn't feel good to them.
Pablo and I were co-keynoting Pablo Redondo of Casetext. And I gave the old trope that AI won't take your jobs, but lawyers with AI will take the jobs of those who don't use AI. And then I said, that's an old trope. The new trope is, yes, AI will take your job, but it will take the worst parts of your job, leaving you the best parts of your job. That is, it'll take all the drudgery away, and it'll then leave you with the best parts of your job. To which Pablo behind me said, no, it's going to take the best parts of your job too. And I thought, yeah, it's true. If the best part of my job is drafting that first draft of the brief or drafting the first cut of that contract, it's maybe going to take that. I think it's probably right. Yes, it will probably also take the best parts of your job too. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is that I think I agree with Horace. Show, don't tell. That's something that writers have known forever. That's something that storytellers have known forever. Show, don't tell, because talk is cheap. Don't give demo by PowerPoint, because if you give demo by PowerPoint, the skeptical lawyers are going to say, they're giving a PowerPoint because they don't actually have anything to show. So show, don't tell, and then put it in their hands as soon as possible. That is, the proof is in the UX pudding. So that's thing number two. Number three, what makes me optimistic is going to change week by week. This week, I'm optimistic that Ethan Mollick, who you probably know wrote Co-Intelligence, is one of the best thinkers, a Wharton School of Management professor. He said, even if we stop the technology today, we're still going to have 5 years worth of implementation of the technology as it stands right now. And I would say that the same for legal tech. We are trying to get lawyers and people within law firms to be able to figure out, like it is 2022. And here it is in 2025. We are now just trying to play then catch up. And the thing is, the tech isn't stopping. It's just going to keep going and keep going. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to keep building and we're going to drag the industry along with us. And I think that these are very exciting times. I know that we're close to the end. Thank you, Horace. Thank you, Ben, for such an amazing conversation. I think that an under-discussed, but I'm glad we discussed aspect is who are the buyers in this market and who are the sellers in this market. Not only law firms are sellers of services to the buyers in the in-house market, law firms are also the buyers of the legal tech market, and we are the sellers in the legal tech. So thank you so much for enlightening us all. This has been great fun.
Ben, I'm going to drop my usual punchline at the end of these episodes, which is thank you for your story today.
I love it. If that's your usual punchline, it resonates even deeper today. No, isn't it? Okay. Love it. I had a great time with you guys.
Thanks to our listeners for listening. As the kids say, like and subscribe. Horace and I would have these conversations with people like Ben, even if there weren't anybody listening, but it's more fun if people listen. Thanks, everybody.
And share with your friends.